Just wanted to make a response video to the, I have no other word to describe, well, I probably do, but, I'll just call it the shit John Mearsheimer just spewed at Lex Friedman. Mearsheimer, you say that Stalin killed more of his own people than Hitler. I mean, that combined with your Chicago American, Germanic Anglo accent, I mean, it just reinforces my belief that, well, number one, it was the right thing to do to leave, Turtle Island occupied by Auschwitz guards and, their intellectual apologists. Because, basically you're talking out your ass. I mean, what? If you read Alexander Coburn's, useful article at the time the compradors destroyed our country, the Soviet Union, he interviews American demographers who specialize in the Soviet system, Soviet history, and their conclusion was that in the process of what Preobrazhensky called primitive socialist accumulation, that no more than 6 million were killed or murdered in that process. And at the same time, I'm sure if you look at life expectancy figures, due to the increase of plumbing, sanitation, sidewalks, public hygiene, etc., the birth rate, I wouldn't be surprised. It must have increased geometrically. I'll look at those. I'll try to look those figures up. Maybe from your friends at the CIA, World Bank, whatever. But I'm pretty sure that the population figures, increased from, let's say, 1930 to 1960, let's call it. Or even if you, don't want to be so generous, 1953. Yeah. So to say that, Stalin and the Soviet bureaucracy, probably more, scientifically, let's say, presided over, the mass murder of tens of millions like Hitler did. I mean, what's the body count on Hitler? Yeah, are you trying to argue that the Soviet soldiers that the Wehrmacht murdered, that was Stalin and the bureaucracy's fault? Directly? I mean, what? What you're talking about makes absolutely no sense. And, just shows you as basically an apologist of, Hitler, fascism, and its system capitalism. And, that's why I left the U.S. and the West, because, you're all a bunch of fucking Nazi apologists in the end. It reminds me of when I was at Evanston Township High School. I had a student with special needs. I was his aide, and he would go on endlessly while watching the History Channel. You know the joke, I'm sure, about the History Channel. They called it the Hitler Channel because the fans of Adolf, Anglo-German, Banderovci, etc. All the filth that came to the U.S., especially after World War II. I'm sure were, churning out those programs at the Hitler Channel. And, he would go on and on about, the Wehrmacht this, the Wehrmacht that, the shortcomings of the U.S. that, or, the Russians this and that. The shortcomings of, the devil communists, or, the Ruskies. The winter beat the Wehrmacht. It wasn't the devil Ruskies, those subhumans. Well, for basically a Christmas present, I got the kid a VHS tape from, Facets, and their collection, and it was an old Soviet propaganda film, during the Cold War called Our Soviet Allies. And unfortunately, didn't get to watch it myself. I still haven't watched it. I'm trying to find it. I'm very fascinated. And I'm sure, it's somewhat ham-handed. But, after 200 episodes of, all hail Adolf Hitler, our, victim of communism, hey, 145 or 90 even minute VHS tape of, on the other hand, there was the Red Army, and, despite the mass murder of 27 or was it 30 million Soviet citizens, we managed to crush, the teen idol of Patton and the Dulles brothers. Anyway, so I give this VHS tape. Merry Christmas to this kid. Fixated on history, and then next thing I know is bitch, Nazi sympathizer, small business Freikorps mother is like coming at me with a threatening tone, and that was just another indication of the Auschwitz guards that infest America. I mean. Yeah. So, between you and, this other bitch, we know what you are. And that's why we're at war with you. That's why I'm happy to be here in the former Soviet Union, supporting the former Soviet side against Nazi sympathizers and imperialist collaborators. And, I hope the normal people of America, take out the trash in the next 10 years, so... and, just a general comment on the motivation of the masses in the Soviet Union. I mean, it's not really remarked upon. I think Ernest Mandel remarks on it in passing. I'll have to read more Stalinist, Marxist, Leninists on the subject. But, gee, do you think that, this social revolution that even these evil... homicidal Stalinists carried out from the 30s. Do you think that might have had an effect on the motivations of the masses of people to defend the October Revolution? Or I won't even say that. To defend the, let's go full Trotskyist and call it the degenerated worker state. All of the factories that were erected, the dams, the sidewalks, the plumbing, the free mass education, the incredible rise in morale, etc. That's not to deny, of course, the political counter-revolution in the was it 600,000 or 800,000 who were shot by the bureaucracy. I mean, many of the ashes of those victims are buried next to my cousins who, barely survived, one of whom, my cousin Ita Altarovna Gurevich from Nieshwiz, liberated and then murdered Western Soviet Belarus. She's buried, her ashes are interred in the columbarium next to the burial spot where the ashes of probably tens of thousands of, let's call those Soviet Bolshevik revolutionaries are buried, including Isaac Babel, the great Red Jewish writer. Anyone with a brain or a heart, of which there, are, there's that number is growing, thankfully, to the younger generation, I suppose. But anyone with a brain or heart knows that, of course, there was a political counter-revolution in the Soviet Union, but that didn't negate the social revolution. You read Isaac Deutscher if you need a refresher. He talks about, the great projects thrown up, the building, and people here in Russia, the intellectuals, even those critical of Stalin and the bureaucracy, talk about the massive rise in morale and the massive building projects. I'd have to look at the figures again, but I'm sure life expectancy shot up. Despite Robert Conquest or other hacks saying to the contrary. Or emphasizing, the crimes of the bureaucracy. But what else? All of that in terms of the defense of, you look at the handicap, that the Soviet bureaucracy gave itself in the form of the purges of the officers. Well, why in the end did the Red Army win against the fascists, which the West sent? Because the masses were motivated to defend the gains they had won since 1917. And, I know a lot of dipshit, barbarian, loser nationalities like the Irish filth or the Ukrainian filth are going to talk shit and laugh at this, but, go fighting for freedom in Ukraine then, or go fight for Israel then, defend your heroes and freedom. You feel so strongly against progress and great civilized nations. So, I had another point, but whatever, So basically, these the masses of the Soviet Union were what was decisive. I mean, Stalin and the bureaucracy. How many bureaucrats were there? There were a lot, but there's 300 million people, or 280 was it, or maybe it was. Let's say it's 250. In 1939, 250 million Soviet Union. Maybe it was less, I don't know, whatever. But there aren't enough bureaucrats to, force communist zombies to, effectively fight off the, the Wehrmacht, which was, horribly brutal and homicidal. I mean, no one in my family hardly survived that, being Soviet Jews in the central zone of occupation in Belarus. And I know what I was going to say, but my roomie here, Dr. Goose, he pointed out last night, Chubaias and the other filth, they murdered what was it? They murdered more and destroyed more. I think it was actually, he said destroyed more. No, he didn't. They didn't murder more. They destroyed more factories, etc., than Hitler did. And basically, your friends in the West, Mearsheimer, love that, right? Because that meant you grind the workers into the dust, and you destroy everything. The social basis, the factories upon which they exist, and you lumpenize the whole population. And, that was these traitors like Chubaias or Khodorkovsky, that filth that should be shot. The Chinese are a clever people with delicious food, and they're smart enough to tell the Russians here, we have no idea why these animals, these roaches, are in your government. They would be in a prison uniform in China if we, they'd shoot them, I'm sure. They're smarter than that and better than that. So, but in the West, they were loving it. I lived through the 90s. I'm sure, you lived through the 90s. You knew what the liberals were about. So, but now you're saying that Stalin was worse than Hitler, but not Chubaias or Khodorkovsky or, these other animals, So, that's really nice.